Hi everyone, my name is Audrey Smith, and today I will be presenting on equine feed toxins. So, what are equine feed toxins, or feed toxins in general? They can be anything from mycotoxins, antibiotics, or a naturally occurring substance, and these can occur naturally in forages or ingredients in commercial feeds, or they can also be added to commercial feeds, and they cause a toxic effect when they are ingested. So first I'm going to be talking about mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are naturally produced by fungi that grow on many food crops, including animal feed. Currently, around 300 different mycotoxins have been identified that each have their own chemical structure and complications. I'm going to be talking about a few of them today. I can't go into depth on all of them, but I picked out a few important ones. And they can attack the organs, the immune system, or even cause cancer. And so this picture just gives you a little bit of an idea of what's happening. So that's a picture of some species of fungi, I'm not sure, releasing the toxins. And before I go into all the different ones, I do want to say I worked as a quality control manager for a pet feed company for a while, and a lot of pet feed companies are testing for mycotoxins. And so I would assume that most horse feed commercial feed brands are also testing for many important mycotoxins. So I don't want anybody that owns a horse to start freaking out after they watch this. But it is important to be cautious and to have knowledge of these. So the first one I'm going to be talking about is fuminosin. So fuminosins are most commonly detected in white corn and yellow corn. They occur naturally from these two different types of molds that I'm not going to try to pronounce. And they are found in the highest concentration in the broken kernels and shells of the corn. So equines are the most sensitive to fuminosins among any other livestock animal. And toxicity can cause ELEM, also known as moldy corn disease, and doses as low as 10 parts per million can cause fatal toxicity cases. So, how does this happen? So, fuminosins cause toxicity by inhibiting the development of sphingolipids, and these participate in tissue development, cell recognition, and adhesion, and they act as receptors for toxins, and they are located in the cell membranes. So, this causes the cell membrane to leak fluids and proteins, which disrupts the entire central nervous system. And toxicity is also associated with liver damage, but not much is known about the mechanism for this. So, clinical signs can occur within the first day of ingestion, and they include depression, aimless wandering, head pressing, circling, muscle tremors, blindness, ataxia, facial paralysis, coma, and death. And those that do survive this typically show neurological impairment. So, diagnosis is based on the neurological signs or any of these clinical signs, or an indication of liver dysfunction. And they can also test for concentrations of fuminosins in the feed. So that is the biggest way to prevent this, is just knowing that your feed has been tested for fuminosin, and then there is no antidote for this toxicity. So next, I'm going to be talking about aflatoxins. So aflatoxins occur in a wide variety of feedstuff, including corn, sorghum, barley, rye, wheat, peanut, soy, rice, and cottonseed. And the concentrations can vary year to year, just depending on like what the environmental conditions were. And it comes from these two different types of mold strains. So aflatoxin B1 is the most toxic form, and unfortunately, it's usually in the highest concentration. And it is classified as a 1B carcinogen, meaning it is carcinogenic to humans as well. And the AB1 form of aflatoxin causes carcinogenesis, immune suppression, mutagenesis, and can disturb organ function in horses. So, how does it do this? AB1 inhibits protein synthesis by disrupting the formation of enzymes that are necessary for the metabolism to work. So, the cells are unable to create proteins. Clinical signs include, but are not limited to, inaptitude, depression, fever, tremors, ataxia, and a cough. Necropsies have shown that the liver of the horses that died from aflatoxin indicated that their liver color had changed and that ultimately their liver cells and tissues had died. And there's no antidote or specific treatment, but if you do have a horse that has been exposed to aflatoxin, you can optimize the quality of their diet, like with their proteins, vitamins, and trace minerals, and it will aid in their recovery. But there isn't really much you can do to change what damage has already been done. There are a few different things that some commercial feeds are doing to prevent this. So you can do ammoniation of the feeds, and because this hydrolyzes part of the lactone ring of the AB1 and makes it less toxic. And then there's other binding agents that have been added, but overall, they don't really produce any great results in preventing toxicity. So the next one and the last mycotoxin I'm going to talk about is vomitoxin, and it is also known as DON, D-O-N, and it can be found in cereal grains, but also in many refuges in Europe and North America. And it is produced by this species of mold, and it is in the feed or the bedding contaminated with DON, and it can reduce feed intake and has been shown to cause fertility problems. However, there have been studies that suggest some exposure does not pose a risk to equines. So occasional exposure over a long period of time has been shown to have no toxic effect. And swines are actually the most susceptible to toxicity. So how is this? There has been evidence to suggest that the microbiome of the equine gut is able to break down DON before it can be absorbed. In contrast with swines, they absorb DON a lot quicker than they're able to break it down, leading them to be more sensitive to it. So since equines are less susceptible to toxicity of DON at naturally occurring levels, they do not exhibit toxic effects. But some studies suggest that their feed intake decreases, while others that I read saw no decrease in feed intake. So next I'm going to be talking about an antibiotic, moving away from mycotoxins. So monensin is an antibiotic that's added to cattle and poultry feed to enhance growth, and it's known to prevent ketosis and ruminal acidosis in cattle. And so for horses, it is highly toxic, and toxicity can occur if a horse is accidentally fed a commercial cattle or poultry feed, or if horse feed is contaminated during the manufacturing process, if it is manufactured in the same facility that cattle or poultry feed is. So what does it do? It causes the ions within the cell to move abnormally, resulting in dysfunction of the mitochondria, and eventually it leads to cell death. And this is most commonly seen in the muscle cells. So some clinical signs: anorexia, tachyarrhythmia, sweating, weakness, ataxia, recumbency, sudden death, and cardiac arrhythmia. So treatment: horses who are diagnosed with monensin toxicity should be rested to prevent further cardiac damage. Treatment by veterinarians differs on a case-by-case basis due to dosage or whatever the clinical signs are of the horse. However, common treatments include administering intravenous fluids and anti-inflammatory medication. And lastly, I'm going to be talking about NOPs. So NOPs are naturally occurring prohibited substances, and I have a whole list of a bunch of different NOPs. But really what I want to get by with this is not so much what they are, but more why they're prohibited. So all of these different things cause an effect within the horse, not necessarily toxic, but a lot of them are prohibited because they could enhance the horse's performance. So, if you take your horse to a show or if you have a race horse, a lot of these different substances could be tested for. And there's this thing called beta NOPs, which is basically a standard set for feed manufacturing companies to exclude these substances from their products, but also be testing for cross-contamination. So working as a quality control manager, this has a lot to do with hazard analysis and critical control points, making sure everything is clean and that there is no cross-contamination between different feeds to prevent this from happening, because there have been cases where an owner fed their horse a certain product that wasn't supposed to have this substance in it, and then they got tested at a show and they came back positive for this substance. So it does happen. So this is something that I think is really cool. And yeah, that's all I have. So these are my references, and thank you for your time.